The Philippines have experienced natural disasters before, but it was the first time to experience this kind of a super typhoon.
It just left a complete devastation. People have no place to hide.
Because of the super typhoon, lives is at stake.
Everything is very chaotic. People were experiencing a lot of distress.
The Philippines typhoon impacted so many people and caused so much suffering across the country.
Real people, real stories. This is Life on the Line.
I'm Pastor Joward Mylven Blaza, one of the district pastors, Northern Iloilo. Philippines is a wonderful and beautiful country with 7,107 islands. Many foreigners testify that it's a paradise with a lot of beaches and mountains.
Philippines being a group of thousands of islands, many people live on the shore because a lot of people living on the coast, fisher folk, as they call it here. And that's where they can maybe have their huts or their simple houses.
Nona Titong is a single mother of 6 children. She supports her family by making food and selling it to her neighbors.
Of course, I have to be strong, because if I am not strong, what would happen to my children? My priority is my family. How can I give them an education and enough food every morning, noon and evening?
My mom is a single mother that works each day by day in order for her to provide what we need. We are so proud of her.
Sister Nona keeps providing for her children, even though she's working alone as the breadwinner with 6 children and having a PWD child. While I'm riding my motorcycle, try to observe a wonderful and beautiful country. And I'm thinking how the Lord bless this country. But the weather of the Philippines is a powerful force. There are some natural disasters that the people of the Philippines experience.
In November of 2013, this tropical paradise turned into an utter disaster zone as the deadliest typhoon recorded in modern history struck the Philippines. Typhoon Haiyan, known in the Philippines as Typhoon Yolanda, was equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane. Winds as high as 196 miles per hour make Haiyan the most powerful storm to strike land. The super typhoon made its first landfall in the Philippines on November 7th, at its peak intensity. When Typhoon Yolanda hit, Nona was at home with her children.
November 8th. That morning I learned it was dangerous because the winds were so strong. My kitchen roof started to fly. I decided that we have to leave immediately and go to the church because the church has a strong foundation. I told my children we must go now. Leave the house. Even though it will be destroyed, we can still repair it. What is important is we save our lives. So I grabbed my son with disability, wrapped him with blanket because it was already raining and the wind was howling. Then we ran to the church. I felt it was safer there because it has strong foundation. It can stand the danger.
During the Typhoon Yolanda, I feel so devastated because it was the first time we experienced that kind of typhoon. We just prayed to God to help us.
I'm pastoring 20 churches in Northern Iloilo, one of the affected areas by the Typhoon Yolanda. When the Super Typhoon Yolanda struck, the wind was so strong that it's like a roaring lion that's shaking my house. Outside, trees were fallen and the roof of my neighbors are flying. I gathered the brethren who are staying in my house during the typhoon and we prayed.
The Philippines is the third most disaster-prone country. You've got volcanoes, you've got landslides, you've got earthquakes. Whether we like it or not, it is a fact of life. But when a super typhoon hits, you see things that are just undescribable. You basically have no protection, you have lots of storm, you've got, many times flooding, so it just feels that you have no place to hide.
The Philippines typhoon impacted so many people, but it's not only a physical experience. It is a huge experience that affects every domain of human existence.
Most of us will have a shock reaction. During that period of time, it is frightening. We will, run, flee, freeze, do whatever our body tells us at the time to do. But what we've seen is that people are very resilient, but they need assistance, especially after a mass disaster.
Typhoon Yolanda killed more than 6,000 people and caused catastrophic damage across the country.
Because of the storm surge, lots of people died. Some of them suffered from landslides, and some of them from the building that collapsed. Some of them are victims of major injuries.
The high-end Yolanda typhoon displaced thousands of people. It just left a complete devastation across the Philippines. What happened here was really sad. You saw people on the side of the roads with nothing left. You saw dead bodies. Some people, they really cannot handle that sort of emotion. People are crying, or you see that people are desperate. There is basically no hope. It's pretty frightening.
After Typhoon Yolanda, the surroundings of my house were all destroyed. Everyone is in panic. They didn't have food, their houses were destroyed. I'm thinking, what can I do for my people who had a traumatic experience? They need food, they need shelter, they need emotional support.
Pastor Joward reached out for help using Facebook and posted pictures of destroyed houses and villages. He went to the city several times a week to bring much-needed food and supplies to help others. The pastor asked for help from ADRA Philippines, a disaster relief agency that not only responds to the immediate needs following a disaster, but also seeks to help develop long-term healthy communities.
In order to meet the needs of the people at that time, ADRA decided to respond with food items first, as well as water. We also tried to provide some shelter. Having the mental needs met at the same time is really important.
As I visited the brethren every day, there are a lot of people who had traumatic stress reaction after the typhoon. At the same time, I experienced also trauma.
Once you've gone through a disaster or something, it's very easy to just give up on life. Working in collaboration with Lomalinda was really a great partnership, and we were able to continue helping victims cope with the mental healing process to get people back on, their feet.
ADRA Philippines asked Lomalinda University International Behavioral Health Trauma Team to work with them following Typhoon Yolanda. For decades, the team from California has been traveling the world in the aftermath of disasters to help those facing grief and post-traumatic stress.
Everything is very chaotic after a disaster occurs, and human suffering is oftentimes hidden. You don't have to have gaping wounds to suffer. The International Behavioral Health Trauma Team is a team of professionals who have clinical expertise in trauma and disaster response. Our goal is to help relieve suffering of people from all over the world, returning people to wellness as quickly as possible to get people's lives back to normal. We work with NGOs, in particular ADRA, which is the Adventist Development Relief Agency, and DSWD, which is the Department of Social Welfare Development. And they've identified individuals in key positions like teachers, social workers, caseworkers, who had access to populations who were affected. And the skill set that we provide is extremely useful in helping to reduce trauma. We really emphasize a community resiliency model. It's a model that we've been using for years.
The community resiliency model, known as CRM or CRIM, trains community members to help themselves and help others.
It is such an honor to be here with all my colleagues and to meet all of you and to work with you, providing support for the people of the Philippines.
The primary focus of this program is to help individuals understand their nervous system and learn to track sensations connected to their own well-being, which CRIM calls the resilient zone.
After the typhoon, there are people who have post-traumatic stress injury, and they tend to have more exaggerated responses right after, like rapid heart rate, rapid breathing, a lot of muscle tension that doesn't naturally go back into balance. And our nervous system can get bumped out of what we call the resilient zone. The resilient zone is our place of well-being where we have our best capacity for thinking and also feeling a little bit better inside of ourselves.
CRIM's goal is to create communities that share a common understanding of the impact of trauma and chronic stress on the nervous system and how resiliency can be restored or increased using this skills-based approach.
The difference between our model and other models is that we bring the attention to sensation change within the body. Other models have paid attention to what's going wrong inside the body. We pay attention to what's going right. And so the sooner we are there, the better. Because there's just not enough psychologists, social workers, mental health professionals to respond to the number of people that are affected.
Nona and her family survived the typhoon by fleeing to the church, but when they returned home, they saw nothing but shambles. There was no food, water, or shelter.
Right after the typhoon, people were in a trauma. Why did this tragedy arrive? In their whole life, they did not expect this would happen. When we came back, our house was totally destroyed. Everything was gone. The most difficult part of recovery is not having food. No means of livelihood to earn a living. It was hard when no help arrived. It was difficult to have no source of income.
Siguro ang pinakabudlaygid among gid na nga sa adlaw-adlaw namon nga pag ginawi namon.
After the typhoon, I visited our brethren, our parishioners, our church members.
I know you experienced also a trauma.
And as I visited them, I noticed that they are upset and tired emotionally. That makes me stressful.
What was the first thing that came into your mind when the typhoon struck in this place?
I need to secure my family. And in order to secure myself, I need to secure them first. Also, I'm crying because I don't want to lose my family, you know.
Genesis Diesto is the mayor of Ahuy. This town of 3,000 people is where Nona lives and where Joward is the pastor.
About 80% of the total household, or shall we say total community, is devastated because of the super typhoon that's never been in the history before. And some of them suffered from major injuries, and some of the people experience stress. It's so frustrating. Their lives is at stake.
I'm tired and experience burnout in the ministry. had a lot of challenges dealing with different people, different personalities. When those trials and problems arise, it becomes gloomy and dark inside here. And so because of those traumatic experience, I joined the training of CRM.
Oftentimes, ministers are the first people that we were able to train because they hear the windstorms of life. If we can help that one minister more frequently stay into his resilient zone, then it expands their ability to help people with their post-traumatic stress injury.
Joward, along with other community leaders and professionals, joined the CRIM training to learn more about helping and strengthening their community after Typhoon Yolanda.
The training that we did in the Philippines was 5 days. And so the first couple days are learning the skills to help people learn to read their nervous system. And the way that we've designed the training is you hear it, you see it, and then you start teaching it back. And said, now how would you use these skills to bring them forth into the community, to help people get back into their resilient zone? Because when we're in our resilient zone, we're much more compassionate towards ourselves. And really, most importantly, we're more compassionate towards others.
The goals of the CRIM model are to help individuals get their mind, body, and spirit back in balance by learning nervous system stabilization skills for their own care and to teach them to family and community members.
You begin with an introduction of what is the model and how it's intended to help the sensations of the body.
Although I have a master's in guidance counseling, I really wanted to enhance my skills in helping people. What else are you sensing inside? And the first 3 days training was so splendid.
When you get settled on the inside, I do too.
I'm gaining more knowledge about people who experience traumatic stress reaction. I am blessed with this kind of training, so I want to share it also to others.
When we go into the field with the people that we've trained, a person actually starts teaching the community resiliency model to the community that's being affected, and we're still there as mentors. And they will bring their cultural lens in order to make it more pertinent. And that's exciting for us.
My training in guidance and counseling helped me to be able to really progress easily and to add them into my learning. I was so amazed and surprised by the skills that the CRIM had shared to us and the responses of the people on it. I found myself to be more equipped to work with people using the CRIM skills.
When we add the community resiliency model to the skills that they already have, it expands their ability to help people. And when you affect one person, you can affect many people.
After receiving the CRIM training, Pastor Joward goes out into the community to counsel victims of Typhoon Yolanda.
CRIM training is really needed in Ahoy, one of the towns under my care as a pastor, so that they can move on from Typhoon Yolanda and for them to get back in their resilient zone.
With most people living along the coast in the town of Ahoy, Typhoon Yolanda damaged over 80% of the buildings. Home to Mayor Diesto and Nona, Joward has been able to immediately use his newly learned CRIM skills here.
Even just a strong wind blows on the windows, I could feel that another typhoon is coming along.
CRIM method is very much effective in that moment because in CRIM method, you are thinking of those positive things that you have learned and those experiences. It makes you feel strong, gives you courage.
With Nona, Pastor Joward has been using CRIM skills to help her cope with the trauma of losing her house to Typhoon Yolanda.
By this kind of training, that would help the person recover emotionally, for him to start all over again. So it's very much important for emotional recovery of a person.
Joward's a remarkable young man with such depth of compassion and wanting so much for the people that he was going to serve. He's also shared that he uses the skills for self-care, which is exactly what we hope everybody will do. And he reached out to individuals who appeared to be really closed off, who are kind of the forgotten group. He can go in and work with individuals who present with all kinds of different types of suffering. Not just being a survivor of a mass disaster, but all kinds of different life situations.
Joward visits Nona to see how she's coping in the aftermath of the typhoon.
I visited Sister Nona, working alone with 6 children. Despite of those traumatic experiences of the typhoon, she still continued.
I have observed that when you mention happiness, you put your hand to the heart.
Happy, of course. Happiness is here.
One of her resources is her faith in God. That's why I admired her. The benefits of learning CRM skills makes her burden light. She has a strong, resilient zone, makes her calm, and gives her happiness.
I felt really especially when I was visited. To compare the past days, it is much better now because we were able to recover. But it is not full recovery yet. I have a source of income, but it is still inadequate.
7 months after their first trip, the International Behavioral Health Trauma Team returns to the Philippines to provide follow-up training.
You can't predict every kind of situation that someone's going to run into when they apply the skills, but we want to be there and have a mechanism to support them. And so we make a long-term commitment when we work with a population like in the Philippines. We follow up, we go back, and we work with individuals to make sure that the skill sets are still working for them.
By using the CRIM skills, it helped me find my being. I became even more capable of being resilient.
Now that we experienced this training, I have acquired skills to manage stress and traumas.
This training is all positive. We gained many the skills. It may be very, very simple, but it will really make a great impact to the people.
I will be relaying these skills to my clients, to my colleagues, and first of all, to my children.
The skills of community resiliency model give us more energy and to think about the good things that happen. And the learnings that we have will be used and will be shared to the people in the community.
The people that have gone through this training program
Congratulations.
are equipped to actually deal with the grief and the mourning and the healing process so that they can then support one another. The community now is already thinking of what they could do next.
The wellness skills that we give them help them to work better together as a community. In particular, I think Joward, in his position as a pastor in a rural area with a lot of responsibility, had to really learn how those skills work. And he did that. He made an extraordinary full commitment, growing in the strength of what he can continue to provide and teach others.
Pastor Joward continues to use CRIM skills for himself and to help others in his community.
There are trials and challenges and problems lies ahead. So I'm going to use the CRM skills in my work for the people to learn benefits of this training in dealing with the traumatic experience. And of course, I'm telling them, share it also with your neighbors so that those people will be blessed also with the skills.
It needs one to help one because as the saying goes, no man is an island. That's the relationship we're trying to build with our people here. Life must go on, whatever happens.
The CRIM skills continue to be passed along from Pastor Joward to Mayor Diesto and to the community.
We are more resilient, and as leader of the village, I could pass it on.
1 year after the typhoon, Nona is able to cope better using the CRIM skills that Joward taught her.
Ang pag-agi sa Yolanda, nakahatag man sa akon sang
Before, the house was just a shanty.
nakabuhi nga sang una nga amon balay hayop-hayop lang karon sa ulihi
After Yolanda, it became better because of the assistance I received.
nga balay. May ara nga
There is always hope. It is here. It is number one here. My hope is my children.
My mom did everything to give us a good future. And I tried to study hard so that I could build a house which is stronger so that we can always be safe.
Ang nabatyagang kubidigani nga
What I felt is happiness that I cannot explain.
kasun mamagaan din yung ako.
My heart feels so light.
Mamagaan ang sulod sa akong tagipulong.
She was using the skills. You could see that the wellness was right there. And now they're planning their future. And the future looks better than it did before.
Next time on Life on the Line.
2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the doctors told me that both of my kidneys had failed.
My daughter just turned 5 and she has stage 4 bone cancer.
I was hearing about other people getting transplants, and so I took it upon myself to find a donor.
There was a massive tumor inside her adrenal gland. Her life was in danger.
Major funding for this program was provided by Ed and Ann Zinke and the Ralph and Carolyn Thompson Charitable Foundation.